Hey, and welcome to the Breakdown with Bethany. I'm Bethany Braun-Silva, and on this show, we're going to be breaking it down with real moms on topics I absolutely love. We're going to be talking about ambition, working, raising kids, mental health, and anything and everything in between. My first guest is the one and only Mindy Kaling, and I was so excited to talk to her. I got the opportunity to sit down with her thanks to my former job as the editor of parenting.com. Mindy and I chatted about everything. We talked raising kids in the pandemic, her own insecurities about motherhood, and how she makes time to stay healthy. So I hope you'll check it out. And if you like it, be sure to let me know. Subscribe, like it, do all the things. And I can't wait to bring you more interviews with some of my favorite moms. So stay tuned. Hi, Mindy. Thanks so much for chatting with me.
Hey Bethany, how's it going?
Good. I want to jump right in, and I'm wondering just what healthy habits you have, or how do you make time for healthy habits, and that's really both physically and mentally.
Well, I think it's, as you said, it is challenging. And for me, my entire life was uprooted and changed about, a little less than a year ago with everyone else, where I now I work from home. I have two jobs, and I take care of both of my kids at home. And so for me, so much of my life was being on sets, and now I have to do everything from home. And my biggest change has been a journey of just kind of self-care and trying to live well. And for I've had to be like a chef at home for my kids, which is the first time I've ever. And so really mastering easy recipes. I was so excited to partner with Campbell's and do Well Yes, because I'm actually like literally drinking it right now. It's just an incredibly convenient, delicious way to like get veggies packed into my kids' meals. And so um and so yeah, like that, I've had to learn all these different skills that I were never required of me before, like being a personal chef to two children and myself. And and but I've been working at it, and this year I feel really good. Like I think that coming into 2021, I tried not to make any super tough resolutions because I knew that I would not be able to do them. And so I'm just trying to cut myself a little slack and just be nutritious. That's been the big thing. Not
Yeah,
try to not try to be skinny, not try to be perfect, but just try to like eat nutritiously and be like a happy person who celebrates small wins.
I love that. I mean, I'm a mom of two as well, and I was never a big cook prior to, stay-at-home orders. And like you said, now we're cooking, we're teaching, and all of that. I'm wondering, do you ever get cooking fatigue? and I have to just admit this morning my son is in school part-time. I threw in a half a sandwich from yesterday that he like, and so I guess it's a two-part question. Tell me about cooking fatigue and how you combat that, and then what is the most embarrassing or maybe thing you wouldn't want to admit that you let your kid eat recently?
Oh, that's so, what a great question. So, Bethany, I think the cooking fatigue is so real. And I used to be this person where I would, you know, I would want to cook a wow meal, and it's been 3 or 4 hours cooking. And then the experience of it was so exhausting that I wouldn't want to do it forever. And then when you have kids, and with my daughter who just like refuses to eat leftovers, I've had to cook every day. And this idea that I would spend hours cooking just like went out the window. I have too much doing besides doing her school, and besides doing working on writing for my shows. Um, I now I consider my cooking time 15 minutes, like literally. But what's been good about that is that normally you'd think like, okay, well that must mean that they're eating not sort of like in nourishing, nutritious ways, but it hasn't been the case. Like I have an air fryer, which changed the game. I'll take like a piece of chicken or fresh fish, marinate it, throw it in there. Like I'll give my daughter a well yes soup, and then we'll have like sweet potatoes or pasta or something like that, and some air fried broccoli or salad, and it's like so easy. So in that, and I literally just give myself like 15 or 20 minutes, and that's it. And so the worst thing that I've given my daughter, when she was still going to preschool before all this, I would say that um, I think okay, I do feel guilty about this, but I think for sending I would send her to school for like I think I've sent her to school with like a cupcake before as like her meal. Like I would send her cupcakes with some because I knew that's all she would want to eat. And so
Right.
I would like that with like some goldfish crackers or something like that.
Yeah, it happens. My pediatrician always says, look at the week, not each day. So if she's
Okay.
getting the whole week something nutritious, then I think it's fine.
Okay,
But
good.
speaking of your daughter, I mean, we all know kids, mimic and do what they see. And so have you noticed, I mean, when you're taking time to take care of yourself mentally and physically and making the time to, consciously, make healthy choices and be present, have you noticed a shift? Does your daughter take that in, or is she still too young, you think?
No, she definitely takes that in. I think that's a great question. I think um for me, I used to feel really guilty about doing things like so I was that woman who would like love to go to spin class and I would love to go to these group classes and of course all of that stopped last March. And so for now I'm really lucky. I have a little room, I have a little gym at my house. So there's an elliptical and a treadmill in there. And so she knows like that I will, you know, 4 times a week, go in there and go for a run or go do the elliptical. And she loves coming in and like she will, if I'm lifting or doing something like that, she has a little pink 1 pound weight and she'll lift too. And I do think that that's something I never saw my parents doing growing up. Like exercise was not a part of our life in our house growing up. And I think I want her to see that example. But you know, the thing is they follow your good examples and your bad examples too. I I try not to watch TV in front of her. I try to wait till she's asleep and, I watch TV in my bedroom, but she like now knows that I do that as well. So I always try to tell her that when she goes to bed, that's when I'm going to bed too. And she's like, "No, I think you're watching TV." And like I don't want to lie to her. So I'm like, "I do sometimes a little bit." So, they really do pay attention to everything. So I've had to be careful.
Absolutely. And then you did mention a little bit about this, especially with the soup, how you get your daughter to eat healthy. My kids are really picky. I know a lot of parents struggle with picky eaters. It sounds like your daughter is eats pretty well. But do you have tips for getting those, nutritious foods in without a battle?
Uh, I think it's super challenging, and I think that my daughter, like anyone else, goes through phases. For me, it's like I will take something that's like something like for instance, like I love the butternut squash pumpkin soup, but her favorite is the tomato well yes, and so she'll eat that. It's full of veggies, and then I'll give her like a grilled cheese, like also. And so for her, it's like this incredibly decadent meal, but it's actually not that bad for her. And I know that she's getting a ton of veggies in her soup. Um, but I'm like everyone else, like I went through that phase where I would make little muffins that were filled with spinach that they couldn't taste but were bright green. And for a while that kind of worked, but then I felt like my daughter was onto it. And so the truth is like the way that I got her hooked on salmon was that I just kept serving it to her. Like I think a lot of times if I'm not particularly feeling like I have the strength. If my daughter's like not going to eat any of her food, I just won't feed her something again because I'm like, I hate the waste and I hate all of that. But my pediatrician said, you have to have a kid try something 10 times before they'll actually eat it, which feels like awfully wasteful. But I actually just committed to doing that. And it was like clockwork for a couple things. Um, like with sauteed broccoli, for instance, I probably more than 10 times I had to serve it to her before she started eating it. And now she loves it. And so that takes a commitment and that takes a lot of patience. And that's a lot of food waste. So it's, it's tough. That can be kind of tough, but I have like, she's into like salmon and broccoli. Uh, those are my two big ones that I'm like, that she will eat all the time. And I'm like, you know what, if that's all she eats for a couple of years, that's fine.
That's awesome. That sounds like a big win. But
Yeah.
my final question is, you talked about, small wins. And, I think a lot of women, especially moms, and me included, we look to you for a lot of inspiration and maybe a break in our day just to laugh, on Instagram. You do bring a lot of joy and happiness.
Oh,
I
thank
can
you.
speak of that firsthand. But I'm wondering, do you have any just sort of like parting words as we wrap up the interview?
Yeah, I am like I think a lot of women where I have really high standards for myself, and I have it professionally and personally. And I see pictures of other people doing really fun things. Like they created like an obstacle course for their kids in the backyard, and I feel so guilty or jealous that I didn't think of that. And meanwhile, my daughter's watching The Grinch for the 90th time on TV, and I didn't have the creativity and the patience to do an obstacle course with her or whatever. Like I am that mom too. And I think the thing that I've decided to come to terms with in 2021 is that I'm going to ignore those feelings of jealousy and be like, this is a short time in the scheme of her childhood, and that if she watched a little bit too much TV during this past 10 months and for the next couple months, like that's going to be okay. And she's going to eventually go back to school. And maybe she didn't get to do an amazing obstacle course in the backyard, or maybe I didn't feel like doing another crafts project with her because it was just like too messy in the kitchen. I didn't want to deal with the cleanup and and that it's going to be okay. I was not raised with any of that stuff, and I turned out pretty happy and successful. And so I think uh, just allowing myself to not have those feelings, to not be affected by those feelings is huge for me.
Yeah, it takes practice. But
It really
Mindy,
does.
thank you so much. I really
Yeah.
appreciate the time.
Thanks,
All
Bethany.
the
Great
best.
talking to you.